Val, Wilmer, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We were going to talk about Roscoe Mitchell, who's not playing Tusk Festival, but we were going to talk about Art Ensemble.
Yeah.
And figured there's never a bad time to talk about Art Ensemble. And you wanted to show me some photos.
Yes, well, I like to start off by paying tribute to a man called Kunle Muanga. This is him here in this photograph. That's a few years ago.
Where is he?
Oh, well, that's when in Connecticut he was staying in this thing, which was a converted railway station.
Wow.
That was a long time, quite a while ago. But this is even further ago. This is in New York. This is Anthony Braxton playing chess. That's Kunle. He was Braxton's manager at the time, but
Right.
That's in Washington Square. But before that, Kunle, I met him because I was the British correspondent for Downbeat magazine, so I had something in there once every few weeks.
Okay.
Wrote articles but did a news item, and he wrote to me because he'd already been in England. He'd been here as a GI and did his army service here. And he was one of those GIs who used to go to the Flamingo in Wardour Street, the famous Flamingo, and he met Georgie Fame, you know, well, he was a pianist originally, an organist and singer. And they became very good friends, and he's one of the people that Georgie always credits with introducing to him to a lot of the hipper aspects of black music.
Right.
And Kunle is the sort of person who writes to people. He was called George Conley then. He changed his name. And he wrote to me and said he was interested in what I'd written, and he was coming to Europe. And it just happened that I just left my mother's house, moved into a flat in Balham in South London, 1969, and he came and stayed for a while. Told me quite a few things about the AACM, which I'd never heard of before. I'd probably seen an article in Jazz Monthly magazine. There were a couple, but then he moved on back to the States and left behind several records. I don't know if he meant to leave them or not. I really don't know to this day. There was the original Roscoe Mitchell sound. It was that record where Lester Bowie, somebody's like taking off one of the American jazz writers. He goes up to him and says, "Oh, Mr. Bowie, what is jazz?"
In a sort of spoof style.
And and he goes, oh, and he plays, bam, and it's what is jazz, and it's the history of jazz in one blast. Okay? And you could not help but be hooked on that. So although I found some of the music, like one of them was Joseph Jarman's As If It Were the Seasons, found that a little hard going, and a Braxton record, a little bit difficult to get with. But at the base of it, you always knew there was this kind of basic jazz thing, which could be, you know, Hot Lips Page or Louis Armstrong or Dizzy Gillespie, anything, all hooked up there. And of course Lester, you know, he comes from a background in the blues and also in the church. Anyway, a few months later, only a few months later, I found out that the Art Ensemble were in Paris, and I went to Paris to see them. I went to a concert. I interviewed Joseph, I interviewed Lester, I interviewed Roscoe.
For Downbeat?
No, I interviewed Lester for Downbeat, and Joseph and Roscoe I interviewed for Melody Maker. And playing drums with them was a guy called Jerome Cooper, who subsequently became the drummer with the Revolutionary Ensemble. Before that, they didn't have a drummer. And he'd been in Europe, and he just came, and he was with them for a while. He always gets left out of things. I don't know why. He was a good drummer.
Right.
But Don Moyer wasn't there forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was Jerome. But also, of course, Lester had his family with him. 3 kids and his wife, Fontella Bass. And Fontella and he, of course, had been in bands together in St. Louis. Most notably Little Milton. She played piano with Little Milton. He played trumpet.
So kind of blues bands,
yeah,
basically.
Blues bands, yeah, and playing Chitlin Circuit and all that. Oliver Sane, who was the same kind of person. And, well, she was singing with the Art Ensemble. I mean, she came out towards the end of the gig. And in the audience, there was a group of expatriate African Americans. And there was a lot of warmth, you know, a lot of toing and froing, call and response between them. She'd sing and they'd cheer and made for a very good atmosphere. It's a very small concert, nice little concert place. Not a huge audience, but a very receptive one. So anyways, the last notes die away on stage and everybody applauds. This group of African-American people come up from behind, cheering.
Down the aisles.
Cheering.
Yep.
And there's a guy called Chicago Bowie, and he's got a big tam or a beret on or something, and, you know, he used to play harmonica and sing and act. And he's cheering, and, you know, I went backstage. There was this feeling of solidarity there. And it was also, although I'd experienced it before, it was the first time it was really brought home to me that however much you love this music and however much you've learned to appreciate it and you've met the people before, and because I'd met many musicians by that time, you are not of that world. You are always be an outsider. It doesn't matter. We're just different. It's a different culture. And we're blessed that we've discovered jazz, or as I always say, that jazz has discovered us. We are blessed. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, they were very friendly towards me.
What were they like to hang out with?
Well, I didn't hang out with them that much because they were hanging out with these other people, but they were very open then. And then I saw them again. I think it must have been the following day I saw them again to do the interviews, because I noticed they're wearing different clothes in the photographs. But all I've got here to show you really is this one of Joseph Jarman.
Yeah.
There, it's some place they were staying. It was a bit of a rough sort of place. It wasn't where they were living in the countryside. It's where they were staying in Paris. This is Joseph in Chicago about a year later. And that's Roscoe in Chicago. And as you see, he's got that poster there of Leila Khaled, who is a famous Palestinian freedom fighter.
That looks like a very modern cassette recorder.
That's mine.
he's got there.
That's mine.
Yours. That's where all the magic goes.
Yeah. We're doing the interview there.
Were they were all living together in Chicago?
Yes, more or less. You know, it's hard to tell really, because people tend to, sometimes people have got special friends they go and stay with. But one of the things that I never forgotten about that was that they were very dependent, like all people who, they're very, you know, solidarity and everything is all very well, but they're very dependent on women, always, these musicians.
Because
they all,
places to stay.
Yeah,
people
well, they're
to...
staying in their own place. They're not.
Right.
They're not doing that thing of you know. But they were discussing who was going to feed them that night.
Okay.
And I've never forgotten that. So much as I love them, I found it very fascinating. That,
So that,
you know,
must have been a regular discussion they had.
Yes, and leave it to the last minute too.
Right.
But anyway, and then of course. I in the meantime, I had met Anthony Braxton. Of course, Braxton had come back to Europe, and he ended up staying at my place because Kunle was managing him for a while, and he said, you know, introduced us, and Braxton came and stayed at our place for a couple of months, and then I took him up to my mother's for breakfast, and I went on this big trip to New York, to the States. And in New York, I stayed with Kunle. And then I went down to the south. I went to New Orleans, I went to Memphis, I went to Atlanta. And I came back via Chicago. I stayed with Braxton's mother, who was an incredibly lovely person. And he had 3 brothers. Well, they were also all very nice, very friendly. And she had married again, and her second husband was very friendly as well. Very nice people.
What was it like hanging out in Chicago for a time? Was there much happening with a Art Ensemble, getting much gigs there, or was there much? How was the scene there?
Well, I was doing a lot of different things, so I wasn't only mixing in that sort of world.
Sure.
I didn't have all that much to do with them, to be quite honest. I had to go and do some business things, like with Downbeat and other people, and then I wanted to take photographs, so I met up with a lot of blues people and went to blues gigs and different things like that. Saw Buddy Guy and Otis Rush, and well, I can't remember who else on that trip, but I mean, I was staying at Mrs. Fouché, her name is Braxton's mother. I was staying at her place as a place to stay. But I went out one night with one of his brothers. We had a good time, and we found Hall, Richard Abrams playing in a R&B band in a joint.
Yeah, right, really. Yeah. Playing
Which is
some
kind of
barrel house
interesting.
piano or something.
Well, I don't know, a barrel house piano, but it was sort of R&B thing, you know,
Great.
and it was kind of, he was a bit surprised to see me, put it mildly. Anyway, so that was that really, and yeah. So, I mean, over the years, I've seen all of them many times, but Lester was a person that I really related to because I think he and I are born a few days apart.
Oh, right.
He's born in somewhere outside St. Louis, I think, and then I went later on. I mean, I lots of different things. This is at the Meurs Jazz Festival. That's Roscoe.
Yeah.
This is at probably the Roundhouse. That's or Shaw Theatre, one or the other. That's Leicester.
When would this have been at the
I
Roundhouse?
can't remember exactly when that was now. I can't tell you. They did lots of gigs here. Well, this is later on.
Nice.
Yeah, these are at Leicester's. This is 1989. This is considerably later on.
At least by this time they're cooking for themselves, eh?
Well, this is when he no, a lot has happened in between times here. This is a special Labour Day barbecue. This is fantastic.
Okay.
He is a dynamite cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in between times, you know, I kept in touch with Kunle. I used to see him, and he managed the David Murray for a while.
Okay.
The World Saxophone Quartet.
Did he manage Braxton for a long time?
Yeah, quite a while. Yeah, off and on.
And did he manage? Did Kunle manage more than one person at each time?
No, just one at a time.
Right, yeah.
He was very much a sort of one. He also played clarinet, but I don't think he did very much with it. You know,
right.
He used to go to workshops at the AACM place and so, you know. But in 1982, I went to St. Louis and I stayed with Fontella, which was, this was a wonderful experience. I stayed with her for a week.
Yeah.
She and Lester had split up by then, but they still did things together. You know, he had this thing called From the Root to the Source.
Okay.
Fontella's mother was in that. She's a famous gospel singer, Martha Bass, and also her half brother David Peaston, who was the child of Martha's second marriage. A wonderful singer with a high tenor voice. And they had this thing called From the Root to the Source, and Philip Wilson played drums. And I heard them at the Roundhouse. It was a wonderful gig. And then after that gig, that was the time. You know, I wrote about that thing in The Wire about hanging out with Cecil Taylor and Fontella.
Yeah.
That was the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it. I took a friend to see them, and we went back to the hotel, met Cecil there, and hung out.
What was so special about staying with Fontella Bass for a week? That sounds
because
obviously stuck in your memory.
She just first of all she was a terrific person. I mean, a wonderful, warm person.
Yeah.
And very, very funny, and knew everyone, and just a fantastic singer. I mean, she's a singer and pianist. See, her mother was a very famous gospel singer, Martha Bass. And Fontella started playing piano for her at the age of 10. Okay.
I don't think I've heard her play piano, so
No,
I've missed that.
You haven't been in the church, as you see. There they are together. That's Fontella and her mother.
Wow.
I interviewed them for The Wire.
Yeah.
If you can find it, if you look
Back
back
in the day.
past. Yeah.
Okay.
This is Martha singing in the church.
Wow. And that would have been in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Fontella playing piano.
Man, how great.
That's another church. It's a different church. There she is singing. And in fact, this guy here, we can't see, but he's her pianist, the one who normally plays with her when she sings.
Was she playing a piano in the church unaccompanied? Or?
No, she's accompanying her mother.
Okay. No, any other instruments?
Oh, no. That's Martha.
Yep.
But that's when at the Roundhouse. That's that famous From the Root to the Source concert. And this is Martha when she was young.
Wow, what's going?
That's in church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you see, I mean, that was an amazing thing staying there because one night I came back and Hamiet Bluiett was there, because he was, in the World Saxophone Quartet, and he was an old friend of hers, so he was hanging out. And I can't remember exactly what happened, because it's all very strange. The choir, Fontella was in the choir of this particular church, but they all got fired.
Fired?
Fired, yes.
Wow.
The pastor fired the choir, yeah. So there was a thing where she wasn't at the church she normally was at, and her mother also wasn't at the church, her mother was at another church. But she said that her mother said they were rehearsing at this big church, so I could go there and take photographs at the rehearsal. And who was the pastor at this big church? Chuck Berry's brother.
What?
And she made me wear a skirt.
Okay.
For a rehearsal. I was so fed up because it was a big church and I wanted to jump around. And Fontella let me, I used to wear jeans and so on then. Fontella I said, can I borrow a skirt from you to go to church, you see? I said, but I won't need it for the rehearsal. She said, yes, you will. Not Fontella. And Mother said, yes, you will. You won't come to church with it dressed like that, in no jeans.
Some pretty serious church business in St. Louis.
She was just being unpleasant for the sake of it, I think. But
no.
anyway, Fontella Fontella told me stories that would make your hair curl. I couldn't begin to tell you.
Okay, maybe another time.
Well, maybe not. She sang with Ike and Tina Turner.
Oh, right.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So
And
crazy situation.
yeah, and who else was there? I'm just trying to remember who else was there. Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to. I mean, the story gets so complicated. I mean, we're supposed to be talking about the Art Ensemble, but and on this one time I was staying I spent a lot of time in New York. I more or less lived there for a while, and it was in the mid-70s, and Cecil Taylor, the trio, I think was it the trio or was Sam Rivers? No, it was a trio, I think. Andrew Cyril and Jimmy Lyons were playing at the 5 spot for about 2 weeks. And I was staying round the corner, so I went there, not every night, but I went there about 6 times. That's where I met the young David Murray, who had just come to New York, who looked like a boy.
Yeah, another generation.
Yes. And he was one of the people who was waiting to sit in. I can't remember if he ever did, actually. But one of the people who did sit in was Lester Bowie.
Did that happen quite regularly? People sitting in with Cecil and his trio?
If he wanted them.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, he was very choosy.
Yeah. I guess that would have been my guess, but
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, no. That's why David Murray was there, trying to sit in.
So Lester sitting in with the Cecil trio?
Wonderful.
Yeah?
Absolutely wonderful. So, he was a person that I heard play with every kind of. I mean, I've heard the records with Little Milton, and I've heard, the Art Ensemble, and we end up with the Route to Source, different bands he had, and then I ended up. He and Fontella had split up quite a long time. He married again, and his eldest son was his roadie every time he came to Europe. Larry. I remember I could just see them at the Union Chapel. It's just sort of part of my life. They're just always there.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so Lester and Deborah had a very nice place in Brooklyn, and he said I went over there to take some photographs of him, and he said, "Well, of course you'll be here on Labor Day, won't you?" So I said, "Well, I hope so." He said, "Well, you'll be here on Labor Day." So I said, "Oh."
Right.
He said, "We always have a barbecue."
Right.
So that was where that barbecue photo came from.
Right.
And Joe Bowie was there, and what's his name? Joe Daly. He's a tuba player, and there's another guy. I can't remember his name now. Another trumpet player. Quite a lot of musicians. Not all the other Art Ensemble people or anything. And some people from France were there. And Lester, he'd cooked so much food. It's steaks and chops and spare ribs. Dynamite cook. Wonderful. Or Terry Lynn Carrington was there when she was a young whippersnapper.
Okay.
And, it was fantastic. And then and I went back another day, and he just bought a new Lexus car. Something's happening there.
Let's see if we're still with us.
Oh, we're still there,
We're still here.
Yeah, I started to get you.
No.
No,
You're good.
right, just carry.
So, was
Not
that quite a
repeating.
nice car, Alexis?
Yeah, lovely. Yes, well, I'm told by experts it's not, but to me it was. And it's got this wonderful, instrument panel, different colours, and all singing, all dancing.
Yeah.
Very impressive, and it was smooth, you see. And they were just about to leave for Europe or Japan or somewhere, and they lived in a very nice house, beautiful house. And Lester said, "Oh, I'll give you a lift home." So I said, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, very nice of you." So he gives me a lift home, and on the way home he said, "We're going to Japan or whatever it was tomorrow or the next day. Do you want to stay in the house?"
Wow.
So, well, I was staying with somebody who I was very happy to stay with, and my situation was very comfortable there, and I had a sort of surfeit of goodies, really. I had two places to choose from, so I said...
Were you worried about offending one person?
Well, no, I wanted to stay where I was because people knew where I was,
and
everything. I've made a lot of relationships and so on. So I said, "Well, it's very nice of you, Lester, and I really would love to, but, I'm happy where I am." I said, "You don't want to lend me a car, do you?" And he said, "No."
Could you drive? You're okay driving?
Of course I could drive since I was about 16, Derek. Anyway, so yeah, and then he went. I think it was after that he went to Jamaica, or he went to Jamaica and Nigeria, and then he got ill and died. And I felt when he died, I don't know. To me, he was so much the spirit of jazz, with what I'd always dreamt of, without whether I consciously dreamt of it or not.
Yeah.
But from when I first discovered Louis Armstrong and King Oliver and Freddie Keppard and all those people, he was so much that spirit of it that something went out of everything for me. It was really very, very, very deep. And I only went back to New York one time after that, I think, or if at all. I don't know. I went back to the States because one of my trips I was in California all the time, but it really didn't feel like things were happening anymore when he'd gone.
So was he one of those great people who just connects people and seems to make things happen, or was it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was a tremendous person, and he. It's very interesting that I met two women that he was married to, and both of them were incredibly hip. Both really, really hip and kind.
Did they do obviously Fontella Bass, but did they do did his second wife have lots of artistic interests of her own, or
she's
just
a
hip
photographer.
generally?
She's a photographer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So I mean, I haven't really told you very much about the Art Ensemble, but maybe I have.
Plenty about Leicester, and it sounds like an amazing thing they had going on in Chicago and New York as well. And they were by the later stages they were travelling all over the world to Japan and so on as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean they were incredibly successful, and well, of course they were the people who had this slogan that I saw for the first time. Great black music from A Love Supreme to a Sex Machine. That was Coltrane to James Brown. I mean that said it all really. And nobody was saying anything like that at that time.
Yeah, right. And Art Ensemble records have a huge wealth of different stuff on them, from songs to all kinds to free stuff to all kinds of music.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course Don Moyer was a great addition to the band. But before that they'd played, they'd taken it turns to play drums. And of course they had this wonderful display of instruments. I say display, they used them, they didn't have them just for display, but it was the first time, you would see all these instruments. I commented on it when I spoke to Roscoe, when I interviewed him. He said, well, if you look at the photographs of all the early bands, they've got lots of instruments too. And of course they did have.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the Art Ensemble when they didn't, without a drummer, when they're playing without a drummer?
No.
But they always had that thing with small instruments as well and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they would play loads of stuff.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's quite interesting because they always call them little instruments. That's just what they call them.
Yeah.
And if you know, I don't know, you probably don't know this, but in the Latin American bands in this country, the people who played percussion, they'd have a kit drummer, you know, and but the people who played percussion were called, they called it the toys.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is kind of really demeaning and doesn't take the idea of the art of percussion seriously at all. And I had a friend who played conga drums, and she remarked on it and how disparaging it was of percussionists. So you wouldn't catch them calling it the toys.
No.
Even when they did play toys, because they did.
They did, yeah. They played everything.
They did play everything.
They were kind of known. They have been known for dressing up on stage and so on. You know, did you see that over the years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody had a different take on who they wanted themselves to be represented as, and you noticed Lester always dressed very straight.
Yeah.
Although he wore like a lab coat, you know, because it was saying it's a serious business. I'm Dr. Jazz.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Malachi was very sort of cultural nationalist kind of person, so he dressed a sort of African pastiche, really, and so Joseph did too, but he became a Buddhist, was very much into Buddhism, and I don't know about Roscoe. I've never really known Roscoe. I've never found him an easy person to talk to.
I suppose at one point Roscoe went into academia as well, so where is he? Mills College, I think he's based.
Oh, that's where I think Braxton was there, wasn't he, at Mills?
Right, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this thing with Mills College where they were thinking of getting rid of a lot of their older teaching staff, but Roscoe was saved in some ways by just the weight of public opinion.
Was
People
he?
saying that he should be. You can't get rid of this great black American musician.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing the Art Ensemble memories, Val.
Well, we've gone all over the
place
a bit. We've gone all over the place a bit, but I think that's, I think the the gospel music is at the root of all what we might call jazz. People tend to think more of blues, but really it's gospel music is the main thing.
I've never seen. I haven't seen too many photos of gospel performances before.
Really?
From you, and it, it's great. It's interesting, isn't it? The gospel performances look as free and as energetic and as righteous as any free jazz photos you'd see.
Yes, well, I've been very privileged to share a lot of those moments and have experiences that I can't even talk about, really. They're too intense.
Well, you did.
Well, yes, but I mean, I haven't told you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for trying to share.
Thank you very much.